Welcome to the Word on the Stitch. My name is B, the creator behind Oh So Happy. I'm so glad you're here. Here's the thing. Today I have one question for you. What were you doing in 1987? All right. I'll give you a moment to think about it. That is if you were even born yet, right? Look, it was a busy year, okay? In one day, the stock market dipped 22%, worst ever. Okay, has never happened in the history of the American stock market since. Aretha Franklin was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, first woman ever. All right. And the FDA approved Prozac. Okay. So people could get the help that they needed. Me, I was just 9 years old, right? So I was crocheting halter tops for my Cabbage Patch kids and in the basement with my leotards and leg warmers, rapping because, of course, I felt like I was so musically inclined to my mic sound nice, check one. My mic sound nice, check two. Okay. Yes, to back when life was simpler, guys, right? But here's the thing. There was this whole other thing going on that was Nobel Prize level huge, and I knew nothing about it. But we're going to stick a pin in that for a moment because today we're here to talk about memory quilts and the woman who helped define their tradition. All right, so here's the thing. When somebody says memory quilts, you're probably thinking t-shirt quilts, right? Because that is probably the most common one. But here's the thing. There are so many more. All right. And what I'm about to give you is just the tip of the iceberg. All right. So t-shirt quilts, baby cloth quilts, clothing remembrance quilts, wedding dress quilts. Here's the thing. How amazing if that instead of your quilt sitting in a closet your wedding dress sitting in a box for 50 years, right? You actually have transformed it into something that you can keep with you on the couch for your Netflix and chill moments, right? That is just so special. The only thing that I think that could be a little bit more special is something like a recipe quilt. Now imagine your mom makes the best apple pie, right? How amazing would it be that she downloaded that recipe from her brain into something tangible, something that you could have, your grandchildren could have. What I think is so amazing about that is how they could hold something that they made by somebody who maybe they never even met, right? So I mean, it's such a beautiful way to honor and love people. Yes, there's photo transfer quilts. You can actually print photos onto fabric and create a quilt out of that. There are traveler quilts. I've watched reels of young people during their gap year, the people that have the time to travel the world. But they pick up a t-shirt in all the different places that they've gone and then have something really amazing that they can use to remember all of those travels. Friendship and signature quilts, my quilt guild uses that, which is quite amazing. Graduation quilts. Here's the thing. There are so many of them, right? But today, what I want to talk about is the Names Project AIDS Memorial Quilt. Yes, it weighs 54 tons, right? But that's okay. Like, let's start at the beginning. All right. So the Names Project Memorial Quilt, which I will just call the quilt, for the moment, began as an idea from AIDS activist Cleve Jones in 1985, and it officially launched in 1987. Here's the problem. At the time, many people who died of AIDS-related causes didn't receive funerals, right? Due to social stigma that families felt, or just due to the fact that funeral homes and crematoria refused to handle the deceased remains, okay? Um, you know, since doing this research, it just kind of feels like I can draw some parallels to COVID. There were times that people didn't have an opportunity to see family while they were in the hospital. There was so much separation and so much loss. So even though this happened back in the 80s, and for those of us who, didn't necessarily know that it was going on, I feel like we've still kind of been there during a pandemic, an epidemic, and know what it feels like. All right, but I just want to give you some background information. All right. So the quilt became both a memorial and a powerful celebration of lives lost during the AIDS pandemic. Cleve Jones, there's a wonderful video that I have provided you the link for in the description below. He says, I thought creating this quilt would be good therapy for people deep in grief. I also saw it as a tool to help the media understand that behind all those horrendous statistics were real human beings who were part of families, communities, and neighborhoods. But even with all of that in mind, I was never prepared for the sheer beauty of it. The beauty indeed. All right. So the quilt debuted in October of 1987, as I said earlier, during the Second National March on Washington for lesbian and gay rights. At that time, the size of it was just larger than a football field. During the ceremony, visitors read aloud the names of their loved ones, a tradition that still continues, and over 500,000 people viewed it that initial weekend. Okay? Right here on the screen, what you're seeing is an example of 6 panels that basically comprise of one block. All right, so then in 1988, a 7-person crew, as well as 9,000 volunteers, people were serious about this. They traveled the country for the Quilt's first tour, adding local panels in each city. By the end of the tour, the quilt had over 6,000 panels, guys. All right, but the story doesn't end there. In 1992, the entire quilt, now 10 times its original size, was displayed on the National Mall with over 21,000 panels from every state, 28 countries, and it stretched from the Washington Monument to the Lincoln Memorial. Its final full display came in 1996 when 1.2 million viewed it, and it had over 40,000 panels. But most importantly, by this time, the AIDS epidemic is starting to decline. All right. In more recent history, as of 2020, the quilt is fully accessible online. I have a picture here. What this is it's an interactive website where you can go and you can actually search any of the current 50,000 panels by name or by block. All right. And then in 2022, the AIDS Memorial marked its 35th anniversary with a major display of 3,000 panels in the Golden Gate Park's Robin Williams Meadow. All right. So Guys, again, the gravity of it. This is the largest folk art memorial dedicated to one cause, like in the world. It is absolutely amazing. But last but not least, I want to go back to the beginning. All right. Here is Harriet Powers. She is the mother of American story quilting. Let me give you a little bit more information. As a Black woman whose ancestry is that of Harriet Powers, I feel like I have to honor her and hold space for this part of history that many modern current quilters just are unaware of, right? She was the modern quilter of the 1800s. Okay, she broke away from quilting traditions. So while most quilters at that time were putting together pieces that were precise and designs that were already established, she created something completely original, right? And they created stories. Okay. And here's the thing, guys, there was no social media for her to get inspiration from, right? Their social media was church, okay, and oral history. So when she made these quilts, they were comprised of her family history, the oral history, the her deeply held beliefs, and her imagination, her artistry. It is this commitment to storytelling in its unique and bold way that make her the mother of story quilting. Okay, so I would like to show you a video that I found. Hold on one second. That I think will do a great job of explaining Harriet's life. Okay, here we go.
Harriet Powers was born in rural Georgia, outside of the town of Athens in 1837. She was born as an enslaved girl child. One thing we think we know about her is that she spun cotton for her enslaver, as did her mother. So, Harriet Powers, like many other girls and young women who were held in captivity, became familiar with the process of creating thread and creating cloth. She was also a person who experienced the Civil War and the incredibly chaotic, confusing, but briefly hopeful moment of the emancipation period. We are so fortunate today to have a few remaining artifacts that tell us about Harriet Powers' life. This photograph that we're looking at is one of those artifacts. She has clearly dressed for the occasion, and she has placed on top of the dress this incredible apron, which we can presume that she herself fashioned because the apron includes the same kinds of imagery and symbols that Harriet Powers uses over and over again on her surviving quilts. She is showing her work off by wearing that apron. There are so many facets to Harriet Powers as a person and as an artist, and to the surviving quilts that we have that she made. One of those elements of her work, which is very clear, is that Harriet Powers was a deeply religious person. Both of her surviving quilts visualize events and stories from the Christian Bible. We see Harriet Powers showing us the creation of the world. We see her showing us God's regular, continual presence. We also see trauma, trouble, we see suffering, we even see chaos, I think. And this connects us back to Harriet Power's own life. And this is a moment where the stories of the Bible, the stories of intense challenge and trial and struggle, and then redemption, reflect the stories of Harriet Power's own life and the lives of African Americans who were held as captives. They experienced continual disruption, continual threats of violence. They experienced events that were beyond their control. And who was their company? Who was their supporter? Who was their helper throughout these events? It seems that Harriet Powers is saying God, that God was always present despite and amid the chaos. One of the quilt squares that stands out is Square 8, in which she represents a night of falling stars, or the Leonid meteor shower of 1833. This was a phenomenal occurrence. On this night, over 100,000 star like elements appeared to be falling from the sky. People were terrified, and many thought that it was Judgment Day. They theorized that God was bringing the world to its conclusion, to its close. And some enslavers actually worried that perhaps it was their sin of holding people as property that was leading to this judgment moment. One of the things that is so incredible about this square is Harriet Powers was born in 1837. This event occurred in 1833, and yet she recalled the month, she recalled the year, because, of course, she had heard the story. And like an oral historian, she recorded it. She didn't have a tape recorder, and perhaps she didn't have a piece of paper, but she had fabric, she had cloth, she had a needle, she had thread, she even had a sewing machine by this time in her life. And she wrote that story down, in a sense, by sewing it onto this quilt. This visual representation of that moment created by an African American woman artist.
All right, so I did want to show you, let me see. I did want to show you her quilts. This one from the Bible quilt from 1886 is currently here in DC at the Smithsonian National Museum of American History. And then the pictorial quilt from 1895, it is in Boston, Massachusetts at the Museum of Fine Arts. All right, so if you find yourself as interested in this as me, all right, there's this book called Black Craft. It's by Robel Awake, and it goes into detail about her story, right? There is a particular part of her story that is important to why we even have these two quilts, right? Because it is understood that she had many, many more. But nonetheless, this is a short history of Black craft in 10 objects. There are also other stories in here that you may not know, but will find just as interesting. All right. So then, let's see. All right. So back here, if you have made it this far in the video, I want to thank you so much for your time and ask for the teeniest of favors that you would go ahead and like this video. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, if you would do so. Again, it sends a message to YouTube that small creator content matters. All right. All right, so as promised in my very first live stream, I'm here to tell you that Robert Kaufman has released his 2026 fabric or color of the year. It is called Wander. It's described as a calm, confident green that invites curiosity and open-ended possibility. It's a beautiful color. It's so beautiful. Here is a free pattern offered on Kaufman's website using the fabric. Obviously, you can use any colors that you wish, but this pink and green is very, very complementary. That said, while researching, I found another pattern that I really like. And this designer happens to be the designer behind our pattern of the week. And here's the thing, I couldn't choose one. They're all so cute, especially given the season. So these are foundation paper piecing patterns. Each one of them is $3.50 and can be bought on Satomi Quilts website. Let me take you right here. Okay. Again, I've provided the information to find her website in the description below. Check it out. There on her blog, she does some pretty amazing things. She makes little mini placemats, which could be mug rugs, and she turns them into Christmas decorations. They're just so stinking cute. Time provided, I want to make some Christmas gifts out of these. So anyway, then also I want to share with you a new segment, what's going on in my sewing room. I'm going to transition into this. Hopefully it will be a smooth transition. But if you've watched any of my other live streams recently, you know that I am working on a quilt for one of my besties. And let's see here. I have this second camera here and my sewing machine. I believe if I click this button and this button, wait a minute. Move that out of the way. And here it is, all finished. Let's see. I don't know which way is up. And of course, you won't be able to see the whole thing, but I do believe my bestie is going to love this. And of course, that is if she gets it. I mean, these are my favorite colors too. But anyway, I am so glad you're here. Look, if you are a beginner sewer, please check out these videos. And regardless, you know what? I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care, guys. Bye.